Have a good day. In this video, you will learn the three different representations of quadratic function. First is through graph, through an equation, and through table of values. So a quadratic function, these are functions that can be described by an equation of the form y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a should not be equal to 0. And the highest power of the independent variable x is 2. So therefore, the equation of a quadratic function is of degree 2. And this makes for a symmetrical curved graph called a parabola. The following are examples of a quadratic function that is described or written as an equation. We have y is equal to 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. We have y is equal to 5 minus x squared. We have y is equal to x squared plus 3. And y is equal to x squared minus 3x. So I have here different examples of an equations, and you have to state whether each of the following equations represents quadratic function or not. So as you can see, we have here 6 items, and you have to determine if this is a quadratic function or not. Item numbers 1, 3, and 5 are equations that represents a quadratic function, while items numbers 2, 4, and 6 are equations that does not represent a quadratic function. So as you can see, item number 1 and 2, and 3 has a term with a degree of 2. That's why it becomes a quadratic function. Since item number 5, whenever we simplify this or we apply here a FOIL method, this will make us a quadratic function. And item number 2, there is no term with a degree of 2 present. Item number 4, our variable is our exponent x, wherein we do not know the value of this x. While item number 6, the highest degree of your term here is 3. That's why they are considered not quadratic function. Another way on how to describe a quadratic function is through graph. And the graph of a quadratic function is a parabola. There are only two illustrations or possible illustrations of the graph of your quadratic function. First, the graph may opens upward or it may opens downward. It may opens upward if and only if your ax squared is positive. So if your ax squared is positive, so therefore the opening of the graph of your parabola or of your quadratic function will opens upward. While if your ax squared is negative, the opening of the graph of your quadratic function will opens downward. So these are the two possible illustrations of the graph of our quadratic function. Next and last is through table of values. So for us to determine the given table of values shows or describe here a quadratic function, we have to get its until second differences in y. And make sure that the second differences in y have equal or the same value for us to determine or identify that the given table of values here is a quadratic function. So on your screen, I have here a given table of values. And if you're going to determine its first and second differences in y, as you observe, the second differences now here has an equal value. So therefore, we can easily determine or we can say that this table of values is a quadratic function. Okay? So dapat po sa second differences ng y, sila magpare-pareho. Kagaya po ng itong susunod nating example, on the first differences in y, as you can see, they are now have equal values. So if this differences in y, on the first differences in y have equal in value, so therefore this table of values is considered as not a quadratic function. So before I forget, in getting the differences po, we have to start from subtracting that value of y from right to left. Okay? Next table of values given, you have to identify whether this is a quadratic function or not. And as you observe, and as I've shown here, the differences on the first and second po, we have here, as you can see, the second differences with equal value. So therefore, it means that the given table of values here represents a quadratic function. So again, you have to get the difference of the values of y from right to left. And you have to make sure that the values with the differences with the same values in y should be on the second degree. Okay, for you to determine that that is a quadratic function. So again, these are the three different representation of a quadratic function. It can be represented through graph, through an equation, and through table of values. So that's all, and goodbye.